Good afternoon, good evening, good night. Assalamu alaikum, namaste. To all of you, depending on the time zone in which you live, because there are always people in this meeting from all over the world. I am Shakira Mohammed, a teacher for the past 15 years, and this is the 150th edition of our Zoom public meeting. We wish to sincerely thank all those who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing Pan-Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Project. So for 149 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. In the past 3 years and 1 month, we have featured over 609 presenters from all parts of the world, speaking on 149 topics. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a weekly forum being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Centre, which is a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. In order to continue this weekly program to make it bigger and better, we are asking that you kindly give us your suggestions as well as donations, and you can contact Dr. Kumar Mahavir for details. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator this evening or tonight is Shalama Mohammed, the co-director of this Zoom platform, who is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. Shalama, welcome.
Thank you so much, Shakir. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Namaste, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I want to thank you very much for being here with us. This public meeting will take the usual form of a panel presentation, followed by questions and answers. To avoid trolls invading our program, our IT manager, Ravin Ramsingh, has muted everyone. Speakers are advised not to admit anyone, not to unmute anyone, and please do not allow anyone to share your screens. Thank you. This virtual event should not exceed 2 hours. And our program today celebrates the life and legacy of one of Trinidad and Tobago's most remarkable citizens, Dr. Kamaluddin Mohammed. He was born on April 19, 1927, and had he been alive today, he would be celebrating his 96th birthday on Wednesday of next week. Kamaluddin Mohammed was one of Trinidad and Tobago's longest serving members of parliament. He was a man of many talents, having served as the former Imam of Jama Masjid. He was a roti shop owner and a music store owner, among other things. His impact extended far beyond our shores, as he was the first non-white to be appointed president of the World Health Organization. In recognition of his immense contributions to the Caribbean region in economic, political, social, and cultural spheres, CARICOM bestowed upon him the prestigious Order of the Caribbean Community Award. He was appointed CARICOM ambassador by the then Prime Minister BASDEO PANDAY, and was the recipient of this country's highest national award, the Order of Trinidad and Tobago, on the recommendation of the first female Prime Minister of our nation, Kamala Persad-Bissessar. Despite all of the awards, though, did he feel people were grateful for his contributions to our nation and the Caribbean region? Was Kamaluddin Mohammed considered a trailblazer and a visionary leader by the political party which he swore allegiance to? Who was he in his private life? These are some of the questions we intend to address in this program and uncover how he progressed from a simple Indo-Trinidadian to Caribbean man, who would actually be called Mr. Carifta. We want to begin with a 9-minute documentary on his life. As Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA would have said to me, no one can tell your story better than you. And so in this documentary, Ravin, can we have that please? Dr. Mohammed himself would be sharing a bit of his own story.
And I was born in a family where my father was a man who was like equivalent to an imam, religious man. Never smoked, he never drank, he never eat pork, and always lived a very, very pious life. And all 13 of his children were trained that way. And so I used to live with him and follow him in all of his things. And when he said, when you're 7 years old, you have to fast, we have to fast. That's the law. It's hard, but if you have discipline, you can do it. And I think that the success which you speak about is attributable to my religious upbringing, which brought with it that discipline.
From humble religious beginnings to an historic occasion on radio to political greatness, Kamaluddin Mohammed has spent his life dedicated to the service of his people and his country. Kamal, who was born and raised in El Socorro and still calls the Mohammedville area his home, says his father Fazal was one of the people who taught him that humility is one of the greatest lessons in life.
In the Persian language, Sheikh Sadi, the famous poet of the world, gave a quotation that if you want to succeed in life, you must be spiritually motivated. You must believe in God. Secondly, you must be humble at all times. And thirdly, you must be charitable.
1956 marked the beginning of Kamal's 30 consecutive years of service to his country as a Minister of Government. He served 2 separate terms of office as Minister of Agriculture. Then he was appointed Minister of Public Utilities, Minister of West Indian Affairs, Minister of External Affairs, and eventually his last appointments were as Minister of Health and Local Government. Kamal is the only surviving founding member of the People's National Movement. He recalled that it was at an event in San Fernando in 1951 that he first encountered Dr. Eric Williams, the founder of the People's National Movement. According to Mr. Mohammed, when he first suggested to Dr. Williams that he start a political party, the historian was reluctant.
I had said that since we have so many parties divided in Trinidad and we are not yet powerful, just as we got together to produce the Caribbean Callaloo of culture, we could do so in a political party. I made that comment, not knowing that when we finished there, we had to go to the home of Dr. Ibit Musahim for dinner. And there we started to talk, and we all asked Dr. Williams, why don't you come and lead a party? And he said that time, no, I don't want to get involved in that. And I just got a call after that meeting, 2 weeks after, and he says, you know, Mr. Mohammed, I would like to have a little chat with you. I said, sure, sir, where, and so on, because I had a little Vauxhall car. Williams had a Buick, and he used to live in Lady Chancellor Hill. We used to go to his house for meetings. And I said to him, would you like me to come to you, or would we meet somewhere else? He said, no, I will come to you. I've heard a lot about your famous Indian restaurant, and I happen to like curry and dal puri. So I'm coming for lunch if Thursday will suit you. First he suggested a Friday. I said, no, that day I have to go to the mosque. And he came alone, parked the Buick in front of my business, and he came with his pipe smoking and his jacket, half of his jacket burned out here with pipe thing. And he was such a charming man, and I was delighted to meet him because I had never, you know, apart from the thing, met him. And we talked for about an hour and over a nice lunch. And he said to me, listen, if I am organizing, would you help me organize? I said yes. He said, well, I'll prepare a plan of action and I'll get back to you. Prepare the program. And he sent for me, and I went to see him at his chancellor home. He said, look, let us do a feel-out period first. I want to have a few meetings on independent subjects, not on politics.
During the tumultuous years of the election campaign of 1956, multilingual Kamal recalled that he always spoke before Dr. Williams. But in Debe, he had to speak in Hindi to calm the tension caused by another speaker.
When Winston Mahabir tell them the people in this area are suffering from hookworm in their brains, and people want to lick him down. So I had to come after, and when I went, I started a Hindustani man, and I melted the crowd with my speech. When we had our first meeting in St. Joseph, we had 10,000 people in that square on the hill opposite the medical clinic. And we had real people, and we had crowds, and William was a great speaker.
While admitting that he was a scared greenhorn during his early days in Parliament, Mr. Mohammed said the debates in the golden age of the upper and lower houses is far different from what prevails today.
You really don't have debaters. I mean, in the days when we were there, did you ever hear Bonnie Padma take on the opposition? He was scientific and very, very devastating, point by point. Did you ever hear Errol Mahabir, a non-university graduate like myself, debate? And when we went into debate, we had, people used to really cup it up like a cup of Ovaltine. It was really nice. I would say, generally, in answer to your question, that I am disappointed that the standard of debates in the parliament is not up to standard, both from the government side and from the opposition side. We don't have those caliber of speakers, and you don't have fellas analyzing a contribution and dealing with the contribution. As soon as they start, they cut off into personalities and race and so on. That is bad.
During his political life in 1978, he was elected to the post of President of the United Nations World Health Organization. And in 2005, he was presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award for distinguished contribution to the Bollywood movie and music industries in the Caribbean. Kamal says he has no regrets about his 40 years in politics. And as he reflects on the number of interesting people and world leaders he's met, he maintains his philosophy of humility, so much so that he devotes his Saturdays to meeting the public.
It's difficult to say this one is the most memorable. So many amazing incidents in my life. As a minister for 30 years and an ambassador for a whole period, I always viewed people who come to see me with great humility, because somebody would not come to see you if they did not want something. And that is why when I started in 1956, every Saturday was allocated to seeing the public. And I was guided in all my things. If I had to meet people or do something, I did it with humility, and I always tried. In all my official things, and if I have to speak, I don't abuse people. I always speak with a lot of humility. And that, I think, has been so, and I'm trained that way, and at 80 now, I still behave the same way.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. No one can tell it better than he could, and he did. Now you have a better understanding. Those of you who are not from Trinidad and Tobago, you have a better understanding of who he was directly from him. Let's hear what Mr. BASDEO PANDAY has to say about it. Mr. Panday is a former lawyer, politician, trade unionist, economist, stage and film actor, and former civil servant who served as the first Indo-Trinidadian Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago from 1995 to 2001. Mr. Panday was, some would consider, as having been cheated from continuing to be Prime Minister by the then President A.N.R. Robinson, who appointed opposition leader Patrick Manning in December 2001 after the PNM and the UNC parties tied 18-18 in the polls. Mr. Robinson said that his decision was based on moral and spiritual values. For convenience, we had to do a pre-recorded interview with Mr. Panday, and here we will share that with you now. Pravin, can we get that, please? So, Mr. Panday, as we were just saying, this is just going to be a casual conversation, essentially. And what I need you to understand as well is that we have a number of people in our audience who are not from Trinidad and Tobago and not from the Caribbean. So they are actually possibly hearing about our politics for the first time and understanding the inner workings behind it. Okay? So one of the first things I want us to bring up is this. You were the first Prime Minister of Indian descent in Trinidad and Tobago. And
Yeah.
some would argue that that is a title which really ought to have been held by the late Dr. Kamaluddin Mohammed. How would you respond?
As a matter of fact, he acted as Prime Minister at some times while he was alive and in Parliament.
Mm-hmm. But do you feel that he should have had that title of Prime Minister?
Well, what should have happened to anything or anybody in those days depended upon the ruling PNM.
Mm-hmm. And he, in 1981...
As a matter of fact,
mm-hmm.
After Dr. Williams died, it was believed that he was the most senior member of the cabinet and the parliament, and that he would, as a matter of course, be appointed as Prime Minister. But as fate would have it, he was not.
How did you feel about that?
Well, my position was that fowl shouldn't mix in cockroach business. So I sat by and watched it.
Okay. I understand. Do you recall the first time you met Dr. Mohammed?
Oh, the first time we met was when I would have gone to Parliament, because I left Trinidad when I was 27 years old or something like that. And when I left, I was 24 years old. And I had been a teacher, civil servant, all kinds of things, and not really concerned with the politics. I left in 1975, 57, I think, and returned in 62. So that there was all this period when I was not concerned with the politics at all, but rather engaged in studying.
Right. And during that period of time is when he would have been a minister in several ministries of government in Trinidad and Tobago.
That is correct.
So would you have had your first interaction with him upon your appointment, election as Prime Minister in 1991?
In 1991.
Or prior to that?
No. 1991, who was Prime Minister?
You?
Oh, me? Oh, sorry. When I became Prime Minister, well, we had to appoint an ambassador to CARICOM. And I just thought that he was the most qualified person for the job, even though he was not a member of my party, and he had never supported my party, but I thought he was the most qualified person for the job. In fact, at one time he was called Mr. CARICOM, as I remember.
Mr. Carifta, yes.
Yeah, because he had done so much work in CARICOM, helped to build the organization. And therefore, when I became Prime Minister, I thought that he was the most qualified person to fill the job. And we appointed him as such.
Excellent. So during your interaction with him, can you tell us what he was like as a person?
Well, a very charming person. Very polite, can be very charming on every occasion. I can't remember ever seeing him angry.
That's unusual.
He was that kind of person. Very personable, very charming.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in particular that you remember about him? Any episode or anything in particular that you remember about him that really thrilled you?
Nothing special, because in those days the Parliament was not conducted in the manner in which it is being conducted at present. people were polite to one another. They had to say what they had to say as vociferously as they can and as plain as they can. But there was no enmity.
Right.
I think that was the difference. As I've said before, when somebody asked me about Manning, I said, they asked me, how can I be friendly with a political foe? And I said he was not a political foe. How can I be friended with a foe? And I said he was not a foe. He was a political opponent, which is a completely different thing. And that really established the relationship in my days during the parliament. That is to say, it was not one of vindictiveness. It was not one of spite and malice or anything like that. They were not my enemies. They were my political opponents. They in government, and they wanted to do all they can to get me out. And I was in the opposition and doing everything to get where they were. So it was that kind of relationship. It was a civilized relationship.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever consider inviting him to be a member of the UNC?
No. I thought it would have been an insult to him.
Him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, he having been a member of the parliament for so many years under the PNM, the PNM had been very brutal to him, as you know. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it was 1986 when there was a changing of the guards. He was booted out of the parliament or left the parliament or ignored by the parliament, whatever. And that was when he, I think, left the parliament or became silent about the parliament. We continue speaking to one another, but I respected the views that he was a PNM and probably still was.
Yeah.
I don't think he resigned from the party. And when I became prime minister, that didn't bother me. When we were looking for an ambassador for CARICOM, and I thought he was the best. As a matter of fact, one time he was called Mr. CARICOM. You remember? He had done so much good work for CARICOM. He was the best choice.
But were you happy with that appointment? CARICOM ambassador, when he was a CARICOM ambassador, were you happy with that appointment?
Well, I think he was doing his best as well as he can. CARICOM was young. It was trying to build itself, and he was playing a very important part in so doing.
What was his most significant contribution to CARICOM, would you say?
I thought he helped building it over many years. He did several things that helped the organization to grow. And I think you could point to one single thing.
Okay, all right, no problem. Now, I want to come back a little bit to him being a member of the PNM for such a long time. Do you feel perhaps he was a token Indian in the party?
He was used. He was used. The entire Mohammed family was used by Eric Williams in order to get the Muslim vote and also to divide the Indian community, which of both Muslims and Hindus and Christians and so on at the time. And I think he was used.
But can you say what about him made him so attractive to the PNM to be used in that way?
He didn't see it as that. I thought he saw it as an opportunity to be part of the government. And as such, I think he tried to do his best while he was there.
But what was it about him in particular as a person, a Muslim Indian in Trinidad and Tobago, that gave him some kind of qualities that the PNM would have wanted?
First of all, he was very popular. He used to be a radio announcer, and he was a popular person before he became a politician.
Okay, so culture in the cultural sphere.
Yes.
Did you listen to his radio program, and were you also a follower of Mastana Bahar, for example?
During the years that I was away, of course not. When I returned, I certainly did.
Do you still enjoy Indian music?
I'm actually trying to learn to play the harmonium.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Impressive.
I have only reached the stage of alankars.
Okay, I don't even know what that is, but
Okay.
imagine.
That is I'm practicing. I'm just practicing at the moment.
Okay.
Self-taught.
Okay, self-taught. Quite impressive. How
You
long
see-
have you been doing this?
What you do on the computer, I can get something called alankars, which are exercises in playing up and down the scale. And in so doing, your fingers begin to know where the notes are. Well, I am at that stage of trying to know where the notes are.
Okay. Very nice. So I know that the Mohammed family in particular would have been credited with really popularizing Indian culture in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I think after he became a minister, his son, Sham,
Rafi.
he became the person that had taken over the cultural activities of his father.
Yeah.
And, I think he was in charge for a very long time.
Yeah. So we've talked about what you thought of him as a CARICOM ambassador and what you thought of him as being a member of the PNM and so on. Interestingly, when I spoke with Michaela in trying to organize today's interview, she would have referred to him as Uncle Kamal. And I was led to think that, you know, there was more than just a parliamentary relationship between the families.
Well,
so
she was a young person. He was much older than her. And the old Indian tradition where children don't call elders by their name, but by something, uncle or chacha or that sort of thing. And I suppose that was the reason why she referred to him as uncle. She wouldn't call him Kamal or Mr. Mohammed or anything.
right. So was there though a relationship with you and his children, for example?
The relationship was very cordial. In fact, I knew Sham, and later his daughter Hafiza's the name is
Nafisa.
Nafisa. And later I knew Nafisa. Got along very well, actually. There was no bitterness, no spite, and so on. No malice.
So besides Church, do you admire anyone else in the PNM?
I admire nobody in the PNM, for that matter. There were political foes. I was trying to get rid of them.
Okay, that was just to kind of bring you back to, you know, the politics. I really wanted to find out from you, what is your take now on the PNM?
I think in Trinidad and Tobago at the moment, there's a vacuum of leadership and therefore a vacuum of power. Nothing works, for example. Not WASA, nothing works. Because there is a vacuum of power. The persons who are supposed to be powerful and in charge seem unable to run anything. And all the institutions have broken down. People are now calling for guns in order to protect themselves. But you know, I find it very strange that no one has yet sought to determine the origin of our crimes, particularly with respect to murders. And it all began with the PNM creation of a dependency syndrome. That is to say, they gave people make work sort of things. They had no skills. And so they needed no skills because what they were doing were really receiving money for doing very little and laboring work or that sort of thing. And because of that, because they didn't need to have skills in order to survive, they didn't acquire skills. And so as long as the money was flowing, remember, Dr. Eric Williamson said, money is no problem. That is when oil was high. And as long as they were able to sustain that dependency, and they did it only to get votes, regardless of what was happening to the victims. They got votes. They made sure that they remained unskilled, otherwise they may have left. And that was the problem. What the problem is that now that there is no money, and they cannot sustain the problem, there have been people who were grandmothers who went through that syndrome, who had children who went through that syndrome, who had children who went through that syndrome. So there's a whole generation of people who were dependent upon the government for sustenance while the government had money. Now that the government has no money, I don't think anybody is thinking, what is happening? The people have no jobs. They have no jobs because they have no skills. They have no skills because they were kept on getting money without skills. What do you do when you hear your children crying for food and their cries are bursting like thunder in your ears? What do you do? You have no skills. What do you do? There is only one thing to do. And that is the beginning of the situation in crime. Of course, the whole society is now one of corruption, mismanagement, and that sort of thing.
Did you ever have an occasion to discuss that dependency syndrome theory with Church?
No. Church was part of the dependency syndrome. He was the PNM, and that is the system Eric Williams had introduced. And he didn't object to it. We raised in Parliament many times the inequity that was existing in the system. But we raised it as a matter of political debate.
Do you think he would have been in a position to perhaps influence that dependency syndrome by perpetuating it or perhaps stopping it?
He was in no position. With Dr. Eric Williams, you forget he said, when I speak, not a dog bark. Remember that? And nobody dared to challenge him while he was in office. And that was part of his political campaign, the dependency syndrome.
But given the type of personality that Church had, do you feel there was something that he could have done?
No. Under Dr. Eric Williams, nobody could do anything that the doctor didn't want.
If Church were alive today, and the two of you being retired politicians just sat down to reflect on what this country is, as you would have just expressed, what do you think he would say to you?
I'm sorry.
Why?
That's what he would say.
Why? Why do you think he would say that?
After leaving politics, he could look at it objectively. Now that he no longer had the person who said no dog bark when he speaks, I think he was able to think outside of that box and outside of that influence. And I'm sure when he saw people hungry and suffering and so on, he would have thought that that was not the best thing that they had done.
Yeah. What do you think is the solution to our political crisis in Trinidad and Tobago?
Constitutional reform. There can be no hope for this country unless there's constitutional reform. Because of that, corruption, waste, mismanagement, nothing works in Trinidad and Tobago. Nothing works. Tell me something that works. I don't know. WASA doesn't work. The licensing authority doesn't work. Nothing works. Oh, all the institutions are broken down and they become, all of them, corrupt. Now we are seeing that policemen are being charged for extortion. You saw that on today's paper.
So what aspect of the Constitution should be changed first?
The Constitution would change the political system. And the political system would create organizations and institutions that control the economy, not by one man, but by several power centers. It's called the separation of power between the legislature, the executive function, and the judiciary. Those must be completely separated. Under the present Constitution, they are not. Or only in theory. But when the master calls, not a dog barks.
So if Church was alive today and an opportunity did arise for constitutional reform, what role do you feel he could have played in that process?
Well, he had tremendous experience. He would have had tremendous experience of how the Westminster system worked. He would have known that, because that is exactly how the Parliament was during his entire sojourn as a Parliament, and it still is. And he would have had tremendous knowledge and experience of the strength and weaknesses of that organization. And I think he would have agreed with me that we need constitutional reform.
Excellent. That's a terrific note on which to end. Mr. Panday, I want to thank you very, very much for sharing what you shared with us, for expressing your thoughts, and for spending this time with us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
At this point in time, I think it would make sense for us to bring in our second speaker, and this is none other than Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA. Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA is a 91-year-old political activist, commentator, columnist, and a foundation member of the ruling People's National Movement, the PNM, as well as the Organization for National Reconstruction, the ONR. He is the recipient of an honorary doctorate of human letters from the University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT. He was a former political advisor to both Dr. Eric Williams and Mr. Carl Hudson Phillips, as well as to Dr. Keith Rowley, the current Prime Minister. Mr. FERREIRA is the author of 2 books entitled Political Encounter, 1946 to 2016, and Portrait of a Patriot, which was published in 2022. Mr. FERREIRA, welcome.
Let me first of all extend early birthday greetings to my fellow Geminian and personal, dearly beloved friend, Mr. BASDEO PANDAY. And secondly, to correct an incorrect statement that was made earlier on. It was Mr. Ellis Clark in 1981, when Williams died, who made the appointment of Mr. George Chambers. It was not Mr. Robinson. Dr. Williams died on the 29th of March, 1981. And from the Constitution, the president had I think he was Governor General at the time, had the right constitutionally to appoint a prime minister, but that, however, was subjected to the recommendations of the party. And the person who recommended Mr. George Chambers instead of Kamaluddin Mohammed, my friend, was the chairman of the party, Mr. Boise Prevost. So I just want to make that it was not Mr. Robinson. Now, can proceed with the Kamaluddin Mohammed I knew. Kamaluddin Mohammed was one of the founding members of the PNF, a young, dynamic colonial Trinbagonian, an active member of the Muslim community. At an early age, he entered the political arena, winning a seat in the then St. George County Council at the age of 26. It was the age of political individualism. The party system was still in its formative years. The emphasis was more on the candidate than the party. During this period of our political history, the candidates dominated the political arena, from Supriani and Butler, Gums, Roy Joseph, Tang, and Bryan, to Ranjit Kumar, C.C. Abed, Badisagan Marat, the Sinilang brothers, etc., etc. Whether they were identified with a political party or not, the candidates and the quality of their presentation was what attracted the electorate. It was the age that can be described as the age of standpipe politics. Who can put down more standpipes in the village, increase old age pensions, keep prices on alcohol and tobacco down, and give a little increase to government workers across the board. This was the political atmosphere on which young Kamaluddin Mohammed entered the local political dial in 1950. In committing himself to his constituents in what was then the farming area of El Socorro, Aranguez, and a few other undeveloped suburban villages. In spite of their close proximity to the city, they were generally undeveloped, lacking in basic requirements for what can be termed civilized living. Water and storage facilities were limited. Roads were unplanned and unpaved. Little or no electricity, no street lighting. A transport system almost totally dependent on the Trinidad government railways and a privately run bus service. This is what young Mohammed had to deal with, first as a county councillor and subsequently as a government minister, in addition to the fact that one, as a government minister, a product of the Indo-Trinidad community, he now became part of a successful Afro-based party. Two, defeated a prominent popular Hindu czar. That did little to endear him to the Indo-Trinidad community that had already established itself as a political force. The launching of the PDP in 1953, preceding the Afro-based PNM in 1956. Indo-Trinidadians generally, led by Badisagan Maraj and the Mahasabha, were clearly out front prior to the arrival of the PNM in 1956. Now here comes young Kamal, without a formal education, not only not identifying himself with the Indian-based political party, but defeating an incumbent Hindu stalwart and becoming part of the first party government in the colony. A government that did not include a Hindu representative. In spite of Kamal's identity with Indian culture and his initiatives like Patmatura, a predominant Hindu, in developing the culture, as far as the Indo-Trinidadian community was concerned, he was a Nimakaram, a betrayer of the cause and the tribe. How and when he got involved in the national movement and the role he played in its formation and early development, its overwhelming early success, with his full support and enduring loyalty from 1956 to his and the party's defeat in 1986 is already well documented. What motivated and inspired this national icon, a natural politician, to give almost his entire life to the service of his fellow men and his country under circumstances that would have put some of the best to an early rest. From day one, as a party member and government minister, Kamal was under the gun, not only from his political detractors and opponents, but elements in the Afro-based PNM party. In spite of his loyal and devoted service to the party, country and region, they continue to question not his performance, but his loyalty to the government and the party. Consistent with our inherited imperial culture of divide and rule, the suspicions of the tribes did not escape him. From the first portfolio as Minister of Agriculture in October 1956 to the other various portfolios assigned to him by the two-party prime ministers under which he served loyally, these suspicions continued from both sides of the political divide. To his eternal credit, as far as I recall, he never allowed his opponents and detractors to distract from the government aims and objectives during the performance of his duties or his loyalty to his party, government, and country. How he survived this double-barreled political authority from inside and outside the party is a story he alone can tell. From his first victory as a parliamentary representative on the 24th of September 1956, when he narrowly defeated Chang Comrades by a mere 109 votes, polling 4,223 to 4,114. There were allegations of vote tampering and the echoes of discontent that characterizes narrow election victories. Having overcome this impasse, he now had to implement the party agricultural development policy, as enunciated in the People's Charter, as follows, quote, "Our economic program concentrated on agriculture, industrial development, the maximum utilization of all arable land, expansion of credit, greater local production of food, government land settlement, food processing, expansion of the fishing and forestry industry, etc., etc. A tall order for a young, inexperienced minister sitting in the then Executive Council presided over by the colonial governor. Young Kamal accepted the challenge and proceeded to assist local farmers, providing them with unprecedented subsidies, making crown lands available to them with subsidized infrastructure, rehousing, fertilizers, drainage, and guaranteed prices for dairy products. It was a new beginning. Lest we forget, it was under Kamal's stewardship that the 1,400 acres of land in Wallafield, released by the USA in 1966, these lands were distributed to local farmers. Most of the recipients of these valuable subsidized lands were of Afro-Trinidadian origin. Kamal was placed under the political gun, accusing him of nepotism in giving one of his relatives a piece of crown lands to plant grapes, discriminating against Indo-Trinidadians in the land distribution process. Friday after Friday, young Chacha, as he was popularly known, was placed under heavy manners by his opponents in the National Parliament. What a baptism for a young man without any formal education or experience, except for a short term as a local government representative. Now, in a government led by a brilliant colonial scholar of international repute, 2 Island Scholarship winners, Dr. Winston Mahabir and Dr. Patrick Solomon, a distinguished international sporting personality, an attorney at law, Larry Constantine, an aristocratic business tycoon and former mayor of San Fernando, Gerard Montano, an agricultural industrialist of Caucasian origin, Mr. John O'Halloran. John O'Halloran, bringing up the rear, was Minister of Labor, an experienced trade unionist leader. Donald Granado, representing white-collar workers. It is against this background that we must evaluate and analyze how Kamal successfully navigated such turbulent political waters for 30 years as a minister in the Executive Council self-government under Premier Dr. Eric Williams and onwards to independence, republicanism, the death of our first prime minister, the still questionable circumstances under which he was bypassed for the party and government leadership, in spite of his seniority, experience, and performance as a minister, performing in several other ministries during one of the most significant chapters in our political history, if not the most significant since the Declaration of Emancipation, the transitional period from colonialism to independence, where you either get it right or suffer the consequences of getting it wrong. Kamal played a significant role against all odds as an Indo-Trinidadian in a predominantly Afro-based government that was placed under heavy manners both in the National Parliament and at the Marlborough House Conference for Independence. With his former Indo-Trinidadian cabinet colleague, Dr. Winston Mahabir, departure from the political Guyana in 1961, under circumstances well documented in his book, In and Out of Politics. Kamal's non-selection as a delegate to the Marlborough House Conference in May 1962. Mr. Said Mohammed was the government Muslim representative at the conference. Kamal never once broke rank, or as far as I'm aware, publicly criticized the party or government. In a political atmosphere characterized by chronic tribal antagonism, easily exposing the young nation to tribal conflict, he knew only too well, unlike so many of our past and current political gladiators, the consequences of fanning the flames of tribal racial conflict. Even when he felt unjustifiably so betrayed over the appointment of George Chambers as Prime Minister, he was prepared, unlike so many others, as a patriot to put country before self. He continued to serve his constituents with devotion and commitment as their representative, turning the once sleepy and depressed villages of El Socorro, Aranguez, and its environment into one of the most successful suburban areas in the country. Sawa Hill, the once prestigious glory of Sawa Barataria, north of the Crazy, Kamal single-handedly converted Sawa Barataria, south of the Eastern Main Road, into one of the most enterprising areas in Trinidad and Tobago, making it the new Mecca of Sawa Barataria. In addition to bringing his young brother, niece, the rest of his family and relatives into the political arena, keeping the Sawa Barataria area relatively safe for his party and government for 30 years, which is loyalty and devotion under two prime minister, subsequently offering his services to the current prime minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. He offered to serve as the party chairman on Dr. Rowley's team in 1996. When Dr. Rowley challenged incumbent leader, Patrick Manning, for the leader of the opposition, for the leadership of the party. Like myself, we were unsuccessful. His loyalty and unquestionable devotion to party, country, and region as Minister of West Indian Affairs not only earned him the respect and admiration of the former Caribbean leaders and administrators like Michael Manley, Errol de Pabaro, the birds from Antigua, Compton from St. Lucia, and all those who he came in contact with. As far as recall, I never saw him angry or displaying levels of questionable behavior in public office, consistent with the expected standards of parliamentarians. Always approachable, always available. Whatever his negatives, whatever his failures, he continued to the end to be the patriarch of the Mohammed clan, to serve, to help, assist, and advise all those who sought his attention, always with respect and dignity, fully conscious and aware of the consequences of tribal racial conflict. He must have asked himself many times, what am I doing this for? The answer, my beloved country. He never forsake his constituents, living under relatively modest circumstances. Among them, what affected them affected him. Even until the end, he remained a resident of Mohammedville, a servant of the people. This is the Kamal I knew, respected, and admired. In the words of the late, great Nelson Mandela, quote, like Mandela, the ideals he cherished, his fondest dreams and fervent hopes may not have been realized. But that is besides the point. The knowledge that in his day, he did his duty and lived up to the expectations of his fellow men is in itself a rewarding experience and a magnificent achievement. Thank you.
Excellent, Mr. Ferreira. Thank you so much. It was a very insightful presentation, and of course, some information in there that very few others would have been able to share. So I really want to thank you very much, and I'll ask you to please just hang on with us until Alim's presentation is done so that we can have some questions posed to you from the members of the audience. Thank you so much.
Will comply.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving on to our third and final speaker, and this is none other than the son of Mr. Kamaluddin Mohammed. Let me introduce you to ALIMUDDIN Mohammed. Before we bring on Alim though, and I tell you all about him, let's just roll a video with his father's iconic and captivating voice in sharing with you one of the radio series that he was known for, that is Indian Talent on Parade, which was first aired in 1947.
I have great pleasure to declare Radio Trinidad open. To those who are responsible for putting the station on the air, I wish success and good fortune in their venture. To those who tune in on wavelength 31.16 or 231.65 meters, I wish good listening.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you have recognized by now, it's the theme music of the Naya Zamana Orchestra, and we are bringing you today a one-hour program in continuation of this particular occasion, the 148th anniversary since the indentured immigrants came to Trinidad and Tobago. So we ask you now to make yourselves ready and sit by as we have a most entertaining program for you for the next 60 minutes on your Sunday morning Indian hour. This program is coming to you with the compliments of the National Commercial Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. मुबारक हो मेरे प्यारे भाइयों और बहनों, इस वक्त आप कमालुद्दीन मोहम्मद की आवाज़ सुन रहे हैं। आप रेडियो ट्रिनिडाद से आज खास प्रोग्राम ये हिंदुस्तानी आज़ादी के लिए मनाया जाता है। मैं आपको दावत देता हूँ अपनी कामों से ज़रा सी मोहलत देकर और आज के मस्तानों को सुनने के लिए तैयार हो जाना। है बहारे बाग़ दुनिया चंद रोज़, देख लो इसका तमाशा चंद रोज़। ऐ मुसाफिर कूच का सामान कर, इस सरा में है बसेरा चंद रोज़। Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm very pleased to be associated with this program at the invitation of Mr. Moin Mohammed, and to join you for the next hour to bring you songs and music and some words from our distinguished friend Nasser Ramaya, Hardev Hardat, Earl Haywood, Jamir Hussain and Sukhdev Jagdev, as we join together to bring you a special program to commemorate the 148th anniversary since our forefathers arrived in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll begin this program, however, with a bhajan, Tum Hi The Vanahar Kanhaiya, and this is done by one of the pioneers of Indian music in Trinidad and Tobago, the late Taran Pasad.
तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार। गहर नदिया नाव पुरानी, गहर नदिया नाव पुरानी, टूट गया पतवार कंधैया, टूट गया पतवार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार। बट हूँ मझधार कंधैया, तू बट हूँ मझधार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार। कुछ न किया धूप का, भव सागर से तुम्ही न मोहना, भव सागर से तुम्ही न मोहना, कौन लगावे पार कंधैया, कौन लगावे पार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार। मात पिता और बेटी बेटा खूब ये सिंगार, मात पिता और बेटी बेटा खूब ये सिंगार, दुख के साह में कब छुर जाए, दुख के साह में कब छुर जाए, मतलब के थे यार, ये मतलब के थे यार होए, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार, तुम ही थे वनहार कंधैया, तुम ही थे वनहार।
There's just something about Kamaluddin Mohammed's voice. And I don't know about you all, but it was a hair-raising experience for me when I first heard that. It brings back so many memories because the Mohammed family, him, Shah Mohammed, Moeen Mohammed, those voices just, they mean so much to us in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just welcome his son. So Alim is the chairman and managing director of ALM Insurance Agency. He's a businessman. He's a religious, cultural, and community worker, and someone who has been with his father on many of those political adventures. And we are going to hear directly from Alim. I just want to augment Alim's presentation by showing you some pictures as he speaks. So Alim, you want to go ahead?
मोडेला बुरा अच्छा है तो क्या होता है, वही होता है जो मंजूरी खुदा होता है. Generations and millions may wish for evil to befall you, but that only happens with the will of the Almighty Allah. And the second one, खाकी लबास में हम एक काकसा रहूं मैं, हम दर्द हूँ जहाँ का खिदमत गुजार हूँ मैं. And what it says, I am clothed in material made from the earth, therefore let me be humble. I am one of the family of humanity, therefore let me dedicate my life to mankind. And this is the words of my late father when he started his programs on the 26th of September in 1947 on Radio Trinidad. So this is one of the things he started his program with, and it continued by both Uncle Sham and Uncle Moeen when they took over the radio station. Right, so basically, as a son, I was involved with him in the development of his political career. I worked along him in the political arena in Barataria constituency as a team. and we did a lot of work together in the politics of Baratara constituency. I had the honor and pleasure of working with him when he was Minister of Health, and I took the opportunity in '74. He took me to Geneva, Switzerland at the World Health Conference, and then 4 years later he became president of the World Health Organization. I must mention too that when the People's Partnership came into government in 2010, the first chore of the first task that was done by Kamaluddin Mohammed and her government was to honor him with the Order of Trinidad and Tobago. That was for the independence celebration. After which, in 2011, Dr. Clem Sankat called me and told me they were giving him the honorary doctorate at the University of the West Indies, which he accepted. But in 2012, unfortunately, he was not well, and he had to receive the Order of CARICOM when our Prime Minister, Kamala Persad attended a committee meeting in Suriname, and it was proposed by then Foreign Affairs Minister, Dr. Surajratan Rambachan, that Mr. Mohammed be given the Order of CARICOM. And he did receive it, but unfortunately, he did not go. I went to St. Lucia. I addressed the audience with a standing ovation because I threw back memories of CARICOM, from CARIFTA to CARICOM to CSME, and I received that honor of the Order of CARICOM. It was a great but very momentous occasion. It was very sad, to know that he was not well, but I went, and it was an honor for me to receive that award for him in St. Lucia. And when I finished spoke, every single leader left the stage when the session done, and they came straight to me and my wife, and they congratulated me on the speech, because I went back to the history from 1967, when Dr. Williams wrote him that famous note to tell him, "Dear Kamal, I am satisfied that time has come for serious attack on the Caribbean and economic community. The university studies have begun to appear. I have received the first of 2 conference official proceedings. The meeting the heads of government ought to be shortly be convened. Notwithstanding Jamaica present difficulties regarding the PM, perhaps precisely because of them, I believe we should actively start the discussion at the highest level at the heads of governments, and particularly to seek and initiate contact with the new associated states. For this top level minister is required. I have therefore decided to assign you the responsibility to you, so I am announcing you tonight. I would want you to immediately start familiarizing yourself with both the weighty issues involved and prepare for my consideration as soon as I return from Uruguay. A plan of campaign involving your visits to the several territories and the principal areas of discussion. You propose an early discussion by you with Murray Sabga Aboud here in Trinidad, immediately initiated. I take this opportunity for thanking you for your hard and valuable work in the field of public utilities. That was the beginning when there was confusion, or when West Indies Federation fell in 1958. The terms with Dr. Williams and especially Jamaica, Bustamante, they were not on speaking terms. And my father took a delegation for 9 days, and we went up to the Caribbean island because they were planning to start a movement without Trinidad. And he went up and he was able to talk to all the leaders in the Caribbean, and they came to a conclusion. And CARIFTA was formed in March of 1967. So that is as much as I can say what I did, what he did in the area of agriculture. In the field of health, everyone will know that when he became Minister of Health, Dr. Williams wanted our students who were having problems to get places in med school in Jamaica and England and all these countries. There were limited spaces. And in 1974, when we went to Geneva, Switzerland, he started discussion with PAHO and the World Health Organization about the development of a complex, a medical complex. And so came the Mount of Medical Sciences Complex and the Mount of Women's Hospital, which was firstly opened, and then the complex. And it is there where today, by the grace of the Almighty, that thousands of our children are doing veterinary surgeon, medicine, pharmacology, dentistry, right here in Trinidad and Tobago. That institution is a living testimony of the work of my late father in the field of health. And well, he did a lot in health. He did a lot in foreign affairs with CARICOM. And as ambassador, as Mr. Panday said, when the UNC government came into office, Mr. Panday offered him to come and work and continue to work in CARICOM. And he did what he's supposed to do in CARICOM. On Wednesday coming, he would have been 96 years old. And we, whenever I see things or hear things about him, it is very sad, to know that he's not around us, but he's with us in spirit. But one of the things about my father was that his success in life was not anything about material things. It was his strong belief in Islam as a Muslim, because he was one of the youngest imam in 1947 in the Jama Masjid. He used to teach Urdu and Arabic, and then they made him the imam of the Jama Masjid in Port Spain. Then from Jama Masjid, he went into politics as Dr. FERDIE and Mr. Panday would have told you. He went and when Dr. Williams went, he went to the Dil Bahar restaurant. That was a restaurant where our store was, which was called Windsor, was built after Dil Bahar restaurant, and it's there where the politics started with him becoming part of the PNM. I must say here too, I would like to recognize the role of the People's Partnership Government for giving him the various awards and honors that he deserved over the years, because the previous governments did not consider those awards for him, but Kamala Prasad, I want to thank her, and Mr. Panday himself for taking him out of the retirement age and asking him to serve his government as ambassador to CARICOM. In culture, I myself started in 1970 with the late Sham Mohammed in Mastana Bahar as the liaison officer. The program is now 53 years old, and I am the only surviving member of the original Mastana Bahar Lab. I'm not active involved with the program, but my brother Rafi is continuing the work of my father on radio. He's on Taj Radio. And then Uncle Moin continued, Uncle Sham continued. And the entire family, Aruna, Sadro, you have Kayal, you have Jamal, we all, they have continued and carrying on the family. My father was a very strong family man. He loved his family a lot. And I remember Jamal, a couple of years ago, wrote a book called 13, which highlights the life of the 13 children and their families. So he was a family man, he was a religious man, he was a community worker. He was one of the founding members and the chairman of the Nur Islam Mosque, the mosque board in the Nur Islam Mosque. And he played a vital role in the development of the El Socorro Sama community. And in his spare time, even being a minister, he used to go around Trinidad and Tobago, giving Islamic lectures and doing a lot of community work. We have, as his children, have tried our best, but we cannot follow in his footsteps. Because I always say that there will be only one Kamal, one Sham, one Muin, one Haidar. There will be never a second in any of them. We can only follow, but there can be no other person. And my father, in fact, just 2 days ago, Friday last, my mom, who is still alive, may God give her more life, she celebrated her 89th birthday. and he would have celebrated his 96th birthday on the 19th of this month. But Allah knows best. He passed away at age 88, and on the 30th of November and was buried on the 1st of December at the Elsborough Muslim Cemetery. So Shalom, I don't know if you want to ask me any more questions concerning my father, his life, or anything.
Yes, Alim. In 1981, when Dr. Eric Williams passed away, there was the expectation among the national community that we would have had an announcement that the next prime minister would have been none other than Kamaluddin Mohammed.
All right,
Can you
Shalom,
tell
let me
us?
tell you what happened.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me tell you what happened. On that same day was my little brother's birthday in NASA, as you would know. And we were in the gallery with Uncle Sham, Muin, and all of us were linemen in the gallery. He got a call from President's house. I think Rafi answered the phone, and he went to the phone. And I never seen my father got dressed so fast. He got dressed, I don't know where he found jacket, tie, everything. And we saw him hustling. And we asked him where he was going. He said he now got a call from President's house and to come right away. So there was a guy named Mr. Bisun Birsing with him. So Sham said, look, you don't go alone. Let Bisun go with you. So Mr. Birsing went with him, and they remained hours. We don't know what was going on in President's house. But when he went there first. Then Errol Mahavir came, and then George Chambers came. I'm not too sure. I don't want to say more, but I think discussions were taking place at President's house. And when he reached, he was escorted into a room, and he was told that Dr. Williams passed away. Well, obviously, there was no doubt in my mind that and his family and the country that the automatic choice of prime ministership would have been him. But instructions were given to President Clark that they were going to appoint George Michael Chambers. It was widely used the constitution, yes, but Sir Ellis Clark, if he had his way to make the decision on his own, Sir Ellis Clark would have appointed my father as prime minister. But party directive, he was bypassed over Chambers. But you see,
how do you know that that President Ellis Clark would have selected your father?
I say no more on it, but I know the person of Ellis Clark. But the decision was a party's decision. When we knew who was there at President's house tonight, we knew what took place in President's house, and we know why it happened. And as the month of Ramadan, and I am saying that if Ellis Clark had his way, he would have appointed my father as prime minister.
How did
because
your father?
I will tell you.
How did your father feel? How did he express to you all that Mr. George Michael Chambers was the prime minister and not him?
Well, when he came up the step, we asked him what happened. We got a hint before. Somebody called Uncle Sham. Well, you know, he was an MP at that time, and said Williams died. So we all thought that, well, we didn't say anything. But when he came up, all we saw he walked up the step, went inside, came back out, and then he said, well, Williams died, and they appointed Chambers as prime minister. And everybody was silent, but we couldn't do anything. The party had made this decision and directed the president what to do, and they had to do. And like as a humble person, he went the next morning, they went to the parliament, they called a special sitting of the parliament, they paid their tributes to Dr. Williams, and then he, Mahavir, and Chambers all went to president's house to swear in Chambers as prime minister. And as it is, my father did, remained with Chambers as prime minister. He worked with him. One thing I must say that Chambers recognized his worth, and he put him on many occasions to act as prime minister during his absence from Trinidad and Tobago, which he discharged his duties, and he continued. In 1986, for the elections, we knew the NAR had formed into one with the alliance with the UN ULF and everybody. It was a very bleak situation because it was a strong force, but he was hesitant in going back up for election. I'm telling you that. But he said no, he's going back up. But he went back up for election, and the party was defeated 33-3, and that was the end of his career in the political arena. He ended his political career. He remained and went into our family business on 55 Queen Street. That was the Windsor. And he stayed there and set up a little office doing consultancy pro bono, right? Talking to people, giving advice. And then in 1990, we had the unfortunate fire. And in 1992, when our store was completely burnt down, and we lost everything in that property. And then after that, he had now started preparing, writing his biography, and we lost all the material. But thank God we had other material at home, and we got Dr. Hamid Ghani, and we took almost 2.5 years to write the biography, of which I am proud to say that I was part of the writing of that biography. Mukesh BASDEO, and then FERDIE even came once with us and spent some time. Nasalur Ramai, and a number of people came on Saturdays when we were writing the biography. But I must say, Shalima, it was a very touching thing to know things that was happening while that biography was being written, and the things that happened during that time had he been a minister. But I could say that my father was a very dedicated man to every task and duty he had, because every time he got into ministry, people thought that Dr. Williams demoted him, but Dr. Williams never demoted him. Dr. Williams put him where he thought he was fit. He started in agriculture, and if you see the background where I am, you'll notice aquarium and fishes. He was Minister of Agriculture. And in his house in Fazal Avenue, where we live, he had aquariums right around the house. And he moved from agriculture to public utilities. Then he went into Minister of Health and local government. And under him, in local government, the borough of Point Fortin was done under his stewardship. And then in local government, he did a lot of work in local government. And in fact, at age 24, he was one of the youngest chairman of the St. George County Council. And then he went into active politics. So that every ministry he went into, and then when Chambers won the election in 1981, he came right around the table and he put him back as Minister of Agriculture from 81 to 86. So that was his roundabout turn back into the Ministry of Agriculture.
Let's talk about him in terms of culture.
Right. What happened? My father was close to the Jama Masjid on Queen Street. We had our business. He had our business place on Queen Street, the Dilbahar and Windsor stores. And on Queen Street, you had Ustad Nazir Mohammed that had the Naya Zamana Orchestra, which they formed. And we were associated with Naya Zamana Orchestra. And Uncle Moin was associated with the Naujawan Orchestra. So we used to go there to listen to music. With the Naya Zamana Orchestra. And then on Thursdays, he would go to the radio station. And in those days, the bands used to come and record the program live on the radio. So those programs were recorded live and then played. He started a program called the Sunday Morning Indian Hour. And that is the words I started with the Kaki Labas and Mudela. He started this program every Sunday with Muslim prayers and Hindu prayers to start his program. And then the radio program, when he came active, involved in the politics, he handed over radio programs to Uncle Moin and Uncle Sham. And then Rafi, my brother, went into the radio program. And then Rafi is still in the radio at the moment. All the other Mohammeds are basically all, but Sham children, Jamal and Kayal, and they are running Mastana Bahar. It is still on, back on TTT. It was off for a while on TTT, but it's back on TTT now. And it is now celebrating 53 years on the 8th.
Alim, but do you know why being part of Indian culture and promoting it was so important to both him and your uncles?
Well, you see, we grew up in a culture and nobody was involved in the cultural aspect. And my father loved Indian music. And because Taran Prasad, Jamil Hussain, all these boys, my father used to do composition of songs, because the song Dila Gafel, he composed that song. Ma Bapa say, all those qasidas, he composed those songs. Isaac Yankaran sang Dila Gafel, and that is a song about death, right? So he was a composer of songs and music. That is why our family was entrenched in Indian culture so much that he started it, and he carried it on. And like singers from out throughout Trinidad, whenever they want a song right, they would come home and say, Church, I'm doing a song. I want to do a song. I want you to write this song for me and translate it. And he used to sit and write for them. He used to write for all the singers. Ustad Jagru Kawal, James Ramsewak, all the singers used to come home. Every Saturday, they would come at our home in Fazal Avenue. And then subsequently, when he came to Mohammedville to live, everything. So Saturday activities in Mohammedville was culture and constituency and meeting the people. That was our culture. That is why we stayed in it. And then he was involved with the Nur Islam Mosque as chairman, which he was one of the pioneers for the building and construction of the Nur Islam Mosque, which is now still standing tall.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of food for thought. I want to thank you very much for sharing so much about him that we did not know. And again, I just, you know,
I must say, Chatama, before I go, that in addition to Trinidad, he got awards from Nigeria, Brazil, Venezuela, the highest awards when he was Minister of Foreign Affairs during his period, to said that he was recognized worldwide for his contribution to world politics and foreign affairs.
And rightly so. I want to open up the floor now to our audience. We have a number of people here who would have known him, I believe, and I think we should have some questions from them. So ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to pose a question to ALIMUDDIN Mohammed, the son of Kamaluddin Mohammed, and Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA, I will ask you to please indicate by raising your electronic hands. You can look at the base of your screen. You will see the reactions button. Just click on the reactions button and you will see a raised hand there. You can go ahead and raise your electronic hand so that you'll be able to make a comment and ask a question. And of course, we have Mr. J. Nair. You didn't wait this time, J. Thank you very much. Can you unmute?
Thank you, Shalima, and thank you, Alim. You know, it brings back a lot of memories of mine too, being in a family full of politicians and fighters for our freedom in South Africa. Two questions. One, was your family part of the indentured laborers that came into Trinidad and Tobago? Or were you passengers that came in as business people for business? That's one question. And second question is, how much of the South African struggle infiltrated the movement amongst the Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago during the 40s and 50s and thereon till 85?
With respect to our family, I think it would have gone from like our great grandfather who may have come, would have come from India. And then the generation started there. They didn't come on the ship. Maybe our great grandfather would have come, because I know that our ancestors came, the Mohammed ancestors came from Kerala, because I remember going to India and sorry, Uttar Pradesh. We came from that area. But as for South Africans, I'm not too sure about any, and in my area or my period, it had the South Africans coming in that particular time.
Right, but Alim, can you say whether or not the struggle that was happening in South Africa with apartheid and so on, whether that would have influenced any of the politics in Trinidad in any way, or how did it influence your father, if at all?
I never heard him really talk much about the South African. I know that he was a very close associate with India, with Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhiji, and because of the cultural aspect, of the Indian cultural aspect, he would have had, but I presume he would have had some of the history of the Mandela and the South African aspect of it too. That time South Africa was Rhodesia under Ian Smith was the Prime Minister. And by the way, Shalom, I want to thank Mr. Panday and my good friend, who I have to go and see after Ramadan, and me, FERDIE FERREIRA, for being participants on this program today.
Yes, I agree. Let's take another question from David Clark. David, go ahead and unmute, please.
Okay, all right. I would like to say, Buenas tardes. And my question is that he did a very great job to the country of Trinidad. He did a great job.
David, did you have a question?
Yes, I would like to know that he did a great and wonderful job to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Dr. Indira Rampasad, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a wonderful, enlightening, insightful presentation. My question is to whoever wished to answer it. I think Mr. Panday might be in a position to do so. It's really, how did the Hindu population at the time react to Mr. Kamaluddin Mohammed's role and function and ascendancy in the PNM party? Because Mr. Panday himself embraced him as a friend, but understood the professional distance with regard to the politics. So I would just like to know, how did the Hindu population react to his role there in the PNM?
Okay, let me just.
I can answer that. I will answer.
Alim, I will ask you to
Indira,
answer that. 1 second, please. Just before Alim responds, I'll just advise everyone that unfortunately Mr. Panday is not with us. He had another engagement that he had to attend to, and therefore we had to pre-record his presentation. So any questions that you have can be posed directly to Alim and to Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA. So Alim, go ahead, please.
And Indira, I think we know each other well, right? You would know that my father and our family did a lot of work with the Hindu community, because my father, Bade Sagan Maharaj and Sat Maharaj. But in fact, my father and Sat Maharaj celebrate their birthday, whether it's January, February, March, on Good Friday. My father was born on Good Friday. And our relationship with the Hindu community, even though he was a government minister, he did do a lot of work with the Mahasabha, with the school, with the formation of the denominational boards like TIA, ASJA, Mahasabha, in an effort for government at that time to give grants, like what they give, like now what they wanted, like what this government wanted to do now, like the Concordat, what it was under his time with Shafiq Rahman and all the leaders, Bade, Sat, all these people, they sat down and they worked together with the Hindus and the Muslims and all the religious bodies to form what is called the denominational boards. So there was no bad blood. In fact, my father embraced the Hindu community. In fact, our family, is well entrenched in the Hindu community. Moin was married to a Hindu. My brother is married to a Hindu. So we don't have no distinction between the Hindus and the Muslims in Trinidad. We like one family. So he was well loved. In fact, my father would go to a Ramayana and he would read from the Ramayana and sing the bhajans and so on. So we have no problem. That is where the Mohammed family grew up. I think you would know that, Indira, from our strong cultural ties.
I just wanted you to reinforce the tally. Thank you.
Yes, I know that, because I know you're a lover for our family, and you know the contribution we have been making all these years for Indian culture. And in fact, we got branded at time and said our family was only Hindu culture, because we only promoting Hindu culture. But that is not the point. It is culture, Indian culture. It has nothing to do with Muslim or Hindus.
And I just want to add that your family has also been heavily involved in the UNC. For example,
Yes.
your uncle Sam Mohammed has been an MP under the UNC.
Right.
So, and I
I
think
am also a member
Nafisa,
of the UNC. Now,
right? Nafisa.
so we are still there. We are still there. We left the PNM when in the 1990s, because Mr. Manning did not see fit to use the talent of the older people like Mr. Mahavi and my father. He had Dr. Joseph and Padmore, but Pandey, Mr. Pandey, saw the value of the Mohammed family, and he embraced my family. And then we are all now, I could say we are not the whole family, but I can say for myself, a number of us are involved with the UNC, and I'm proud to be a UNC. Yellow and proud.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indira. Thank you, Alim. I want to ask Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA to please give us your opinion on the Hindu, how did the Hindus feel about Dr. Kamaluddin Mohammed? Mr. Ferreira? Donna, you'll have to unmute, please. Okay, well, I'm not hearing him. I'm not too sure.
Salma, let me answer that question for you.
You did.
As a matter of fact, let me answer that question for you. The thing is that when my father joined the PNM, a number of Hindu people came in, like the Oja Maharaj family, the Sinanan family, the Rohan father, or the whole Sinanan family were part of the PNM. He brought in a lot of the Hindu community into the PNM. That is why the Rohan took up, his father was not a politician, but a lot of families came and they got involved and they helped, and they were not too actively involved in the electoral politics, but they were involved with the PNM. So that there was no form of anything that the Hindus were accepted in the PNM. And you had Devdutt Oja Maharaj, who was also a senator in the 1991 time with Mr. Manning. And you had so you had a number of people who were even within the Senate. Nan Ramlong, as she was from the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. So the Hindus were really accepted to in the PNM as they are at the present moment.
All right, thank you. We have another question here, and this one is from Diana and Ghani Singh. Alim, he says, years ago, I went to a funeral at Waterloo, and I think he meant your father and Mr. Pandey were attending another funeral. He met your father, and he looked at Mr. Ghani Singh and made a comment about, the comment was, you have a very colorful tie. And Mr. Ghani Singh responded, it is not as colorful as you, sir. So Mr. Ghani Singh is saying both your dad and Uncle Sham had left the PNM and aligned politically with the UNC. What were his personal thoughts in the lead up to that decision, since he was a PNM stalwart and would have discussed it with his family?
All right. Okay. In 1991, we were Uncle Sham was in the PNM up to 1991, and the UNC had approached him to fight a seat for the UNC because, I mean, I don't like to go into the details of what went on from 86 to 91 with the PNM, right? But he decided to fight the Caroni East seat, and he went up for the Caroni East seat, and he became member of parliament for Caroni East. And then you would realize that Mr. Pandey had offered my father his ambassadorial position. But joining, I can't substantiate whether he joined the party or not. I can't answer for him on that. But he became active with the UNC. I know that. We used to go to the meetings and so on because they embraced him. The party he founded, not Mr. Ferreira. Mr. Ferreira is a gentleman. The party that he founded, there was a time when they were calling the old and new PNM, right? They did not embrace people like him, right? But he was embraced, and there's no doubt we went around. We used to go to the meetings of the UNC, and then Sham was MP. He became MP for Karen, and then he died suddenly in 1993, as you would know, in May of 1993. So that there's no hard feelings about what happened. The Almighty always put things in a way that things happen for that reason.
All right. I'm not seeing any other raised hands. If no one else has questions, I'm going to ask you to make a closing comment, Ali. This is, okay, sorry, there is indeed a question. I'm seeing Pawan Bhatia. Go ahead, please.
This is Vishnu Bisram.
Oh, Vishnu.
I do remember church very well in the UNC period in the 1990s and up until 2004 thereabout. We used to whenever I came to Trinidad, we used to meet and we used to talk about issues within the UNC, particularly when there was a conflict between Mr. Pandey and Mr. Maharaj, and I had asked him to intervene to see if he could bring reconciliation between the two. And I believe, I know for sure that he did his utmost best to reconcile the parties. Continuing well into 2007, I believe, he tried, and it was his intervention that led to that unity in 2007 again between Pandey and Ramesh, and subsequently with the formation of the alliance in 2010. So Church was very helpful, was very active in UNC politics behind the scenes. Certainly not in public. I don't think many people were aware of it, and I don't think many people knew that he was working behind the scenes as well for this reconciliation between Pandey and Ramesh.
Vishnu?
Yeah.
Vishnu, I was glad to hear your voice. My greetings to you and your family.
Thank you.
I was around in those days with you too. You remember you used to Lyman Barata?
I did. I did come
Right.
to see your father a few times at home, yes.
Right. So I was around in those days too, and that whole panchayat scenario with the Ramesh tolerance and trying to bring all the parties, because my father, as you know, Vishnu, always believe in unity, right? After the 2007 election with Vincent Dukaran and the COP, he wanted unity, and they got unity through Jack Warner, bringing all the parties together. My father's life was unity. That was it, bringing the Muslim community together and bringing the Hindu community. My father's middle name was unity and humility. I think you would know that.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so it's been a very interesting and revealing conversation. And Halim, is there anything you want to say as a closing comment?
Salma, I would like to take this opportunity to wish the nation as we do two things. On Tuesday, which we call Shaftarah night in the Muslim community, and then on Saturday, all being well, Eid al-Fitr, Eid Mubarak. And Shalma, I want to thank you, and I pray that the Almighty Allah will continue to bless you and your team and my brother Kumar and your entire team for bringing such a program, because I remember last year Kumar asked me, and probably it wasn't the time, but what happened? Today is the day, and it has happened. I'm hoping you can send me a copy of that recording of this program today. But I want to thank you and your team, and I want to wish your team God's continued blessing for the excellent work you all are doing to bring to the fore information that what people does not have in Trinidad for all these years about certain people and certain things that took place in our small, beautiful Twin Island state.
I want to thank you for your time, Alim. Thank you for sharing all of those facts that we are not aware of.
And nothing was prepared on paper. All this was done ab lib.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Mr. FERDIE FERREIRA as well. And I hope that you already do meet and have a little chat.
Yes, I have to meet with FERDIE. He sent me his number. FERDIE, we have to meet, because he was a great friend of my father. Because in my father days, when he was Minister of Public Utilities, FERDIE was the boss down the port.
Yes, we could possibly plan a program around that and have an open discussion about it as well. So I want to say thank you both to you and to him. And ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I want to thank you very much for spending the evening with us. And I hope it was as enlightening for you as it was for us. So let me turn you over now to the chair, Shakira.
Thank you, Shalama, for being a wonderful moderator as always. And remember that we are still looking for more Indian elders over 80 years old to interview live next month for part 9 of this series. We are asking their children and grandchildren to help us in this oral history project. So anyone across the world, we would like that assistance, and this will be a fantastic opportunity. Thank you all for taking the time to participate, and thank you especially to the speakers. As I've said before, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Centre, and you can feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books and your reports. Remember that we are asking you to give us your suggestions as well as donations, and you can contact Dr. Mohammed for details. Thank you to our advisory and planning team led by Dr. Kumar Mahaber, and thank you to our IT manager behind the scenes, Ravin Ramsingh, who has been recording the program and will edit and upload it to our website and to YouTube permanently for posterity. Our topic next Sunday will be the caste system, origins, history, practice, solutions. Please visit our YouTube channel, see all of past recordings. I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Dhanyavad.